1,000 subscribers! Yay everyone, I've reached 1,000 subscribers. It actually happened back on October 5th, but it took almost a whole week for YouTube to unlock my community panel. And then I needed to make an announcement and gather up the questions. But first off, thank you. Thank you for helping me grow my channel so quickly, for not canceling me when I started talking about race issues and anti-political policies, and for just listening to what I have to say. This literally wouldn't have been possible without you. I will include a table of contents with timestamps in the video description. Even if I don't get to your question in this video, there will probably be another Q&A in the future where you can ask the question again. But just in general, you're welcome to comment on my videos with your questions. I try to give good answers regardless of whether I'm doing a video about it. It's just that Q&A videos give me an opportunity to go into greater detail, deal with more complex topics, and share the answers with a wider audience. So let's start off with some more casual questions. The first topic, which has been repeatedly asked about, is my Fursona. My Fursona was professionally designed by an artist called SketchRabbit. She offers an iterative design service where you provide a set of reference material and she'll sketch out some design pages and then use that to iterate on your Fursona's design. It was honestly a fun, wonderful experience, and SketchRabbit was very pleasant to work with. I fully recommend her for when you have a general theme or idea for your Fursona, but you're struggling with the finer details. In my case, I wanted my Fursona to be similar to Crystal from Star Fox, but with heart-shaped markings. SketchRabbit allowed me to take that idea and get a full design out of it. But perhaps more importantly, she created my face rig model. Honestly, I wouldn't have been able to start up my YouTube channel so quickly if it wasn't for her. I had been trying to find an artist to create the model for me, and she took on the job despite not having face rig experience. SketchRabbit, thank you so much. You are brilliant and amazing. And to my general audience, I fully recommend checking out her work. The next topic, which happens to be loosely related to the previous one, is my color preferences. My favorite color is pink, but I also really like the combination of pink and black. I like black because it's my natural hair color, and I've actually been a fan of this color combination for a long time, even before I realized I was trans. So of course it's what I asked SketchRabbit to use for my Fursona design. In terms of clothing, I like to wear vibrant colors in general, such as turquoise, orange, and purple, but especially light pink and light blue, which are trans pride colors. Okay, this next topic is a bit harder. I've been asked about my music preferences, but the thing is that I don't really listen to mainstream music. I mainly listen to the soundtracks of video games and TV shows. If I had to pick a genre, I guess I would say fantasy music, basically anything that would make sense in an RPG. But more importantly, I want my songs to convey some kind of emotion to me. I need it to make me feel something. As for my favorite artists, if I had to choose only one, it would be Yoko Shimomura. You know, because of the memes. However, I also really like Nana Mizuki, Masaki Endo, and the Japanese band Jam Project. This next topic is also about my preferences, this time on my favorite movies and shows. I mean, the first part is easy. My all-time favorite movie is The Phantom. Ash did such an amazing job, so I'd love the film even if I wasn't biased. If I could only watch one movie for the rest of my life, it would be The Phantom. And that is actually a helpful guideline, because picking my favorite show is a bit harder. I watch a fair amount of anime, but if I had to narrow it down to just one show forever, it would be Symphogear. And then if I had to choose a Western TV show, I guess I'd pick The Flash, but I haven't really kept up with it since Netflix acquired the license for the show in Canada. I was also asked what my favorite books are, but the thing is that I hardly read, so I don't have a good answer for that. And finally, I was asked where the different online furry communities are. I'm honestly not an expert on this, but I know that Fur Affinity and Furry Life Online are dedicated furry sites, and that all major social media platforms likely have furry communities too. Chat platforms like Discord and Telegram also have furry groups, but these usually require an invite. This makes them harder to find and get into unless you specifically know what you're looking for. Back when I was in the fandom 7 years ago, I was mostly on Furfinity, and I'd sometimes watch furry content on YouTube. Currently, I have pages on multiple platforms for advertising purposes, but the best place to reach me is here on YouTube. I'm also fairly active on Twitter, but my direct messages are closed to people who I'm not following. If you want to say hi, I prefer that you do so publicly on YouTube or Twitter. And then if you want my advice on something that needs to be private, let me know and then we can move the chat to Twitter or Reddit. Alright, now we're moving on to the difficult questions, starting off with trans-related topics and then general topics. First off, how do you, as someone who is questioning your gender or in the early phases of transition, stop doubting your trans status? This is not something that I've personally struggled with because it took me less than a day of thought to recognize and accept my gender dysphoria. However, I think I can use my own confidence to come up with tips for reaching that level of confidence yourself, but definitely take my advice with a grain of salt. First, identify your sources of gender dysphoria or gender euphoria. If you experience gender dysphoria, that alone is a good indicator that you're trans. And even if you only experience gender euphoria, well, if being a gender other than the one you were assigned at birth would make you a happier and healthier person, then what's the harm in transitioning? Next, recognize that transition is a slow process, so there are plenty of opportunities to stop if you change your mind early on. The main consequence would be the permanent effects of hormone replacement therapy if you are on it for long enough. But in most cases, even that requires a few months to start kicking in. Finally, acknowledge that life is short. If you're questioning your identity and there's a chance that you may not be living your truest self, why not take the chance at transitioning, even if you're not completely sure, or better yet, to know for sure whether or not it was the right decision? Personally, I've experienced hardship, disappointment, and a close encounter with death. You need to ask yourself whether you are fine living the rest of your life as you are, never exploring that nagging feeling in your head that something is wrong or that you can be something more. I mean, the average cis person doesn't question their gender, so the fact that you're even doing that is a good indicator that you're trans. I hope that advice helps. Next, a broader question: what is the best way to support trans people? First of all, you need to understand that all trans people are different, so we will not agree on all subjects, even on trans issues. There are plenty of trans people I disagree with, and there are even entire communities of trans people that I stay away from. Therefore, I will give my advice for supporting an individual trans person, and then my advice for supporting the broader trans community. Starting with the former, the most important thing you can do to support a trans friend or acquaintance is to ask what they want you to do. And when still in doubt, always err on the side of validation. If someone comes out to you, don't question their identity, instead express support. If someone says they don't care which pronouns you use the more validating ones anyways, except in cases where it would out them as trans. This should also go without saying, but never out a trans person without their permission. Now on to general support. The best thing you can do is listen to trans people and what they have to say. And once again, err on the side of validation and inclusion. This is important for maintaining a trans inclusive environment, which you should be doing even if there aren't any visible trans people. A common issue I see in the fandom is that when someone does something ignorant, discriminatory, or outright hateful, minority groups tend to get spoken over. If someone does something racist or transphobic and you do not belong to that minority group, it is not your place to dismiss the complaints from the minority group. It is also not your place to forgive someone for performing that action because the issue is not about you. Doing so takes away attention from the people who are actually affected, and doing so normalizes discriminatory behavior. I don't believe that people should be condemned over innocent mistakes, but there also needs to be education and accountability. If you are not a victim, it is not your place to exonerate them, and that is something the fandom in particular has trouble understanding. Some other trans topics I was asked about are hormone replacement therapy and voice training. I'm going to cover these topics in a future video instead, but for now, let me give you this information. Hormones were great for my emotional stability, amplifying my healthy emotions while downplaying the unhealthy depressive ones. However, it took a year for the physical changes to become noticeable, and then I continued to change for several years after. As for voice training, I mainly just focused on raising my pitch by reading paragraphs and practicing common expressions. I know you can do more specific training for stuff like inflection, but when I first started transition, I did not feel up to it. I bought a voice training app, but it was so difficult that I couldn't even get past the breathing exercises. Therefore, I just trained on my own. Moving on to general topics again, I was asked if I have any tips for starting a YouTube channel. This is another topic that would probably make more sense as its own video, but it would be presumptuous of me to make it now when I've only done my channel for 2 months. For now, let me give you the most important tip I have. Understand why you are making the channel and make sure the reason is not money. Starting this channel has honestly been really expensive, and I initially paid for everything out of pocket. I have 2 patrons at the time of recording, and Fen Frostpaws in particular donates an exorbitant amount of money. I am extremely fortunate because this is an exceptional case. This amount of financial success cannot be expected, especially not when you're first starting out. Therefore, it is important to define your channel's success by some other metric. In my case, it is education and representation. I am succeeding when I am able to talk to a large audience about the things that I care about without having many people tune me out for being too severe. To put things in perspective, what makes YouTube different from other furry content is that there are no pricing tiers. If you commission one artist for $100 and another for $1,000, you'll expect the more expensive one to demonstrate a greater level of skill or detail. However, on YouTube, everything is free, which means that my channel, a couple months old with 1,000 subscribers, is compared against people who have been doing YouTube for years, perhaps even full-time, with tens or even hundreds of thousands of people watching. This leaves you with little time and space to grow, and it makes it harder to work with company, artists, or other YouTubers in the fandom, because they're either not interested or they expect you to be more skilled and successful than you currently are. Honestly, despite my colorful backstory, by fandom standards I am extremely mundane. To finish this Q&A off, I was asked about how 2020 has treated me and whether I've faced any major hardships. The thing is that I actually have several chronic health issues. I have been very fortunate to keep my jobs throughout the pandemic, and being able to work remotely has made it a lot easier to manage my health. However, the pandemic has complicated the process of accessing healthcare, and while some of these conditions have improved, others have gotten worse. You may recall that in my 100 subscriber special, I talked about the wildfire smoke. That was a particularly hard time for me, and it directly impacted my video production speed. Even as I am making this video, I have been dealing with a medical issue. My partner and I are long distance, and COVID also derailed our plans to visit each other this year, which was disappointing too. But overall, this has been a good year for me. I've returned to the fandom to reconcile my past and rediscover myself as a furry. I feel more connected to the trans community than ever before, and I even started this amazing channel. Out of everyone I know, I will probably have the coolest post-COVID time skip. However, I do recognize that a lot of people have experienced a lot of hardship this year. My partner was already struggling to find work in his area before COVID, and he certainly hasn't been able to find anything since the pandemic hit. I hope that the COVID situation is resolved soon so that we can all move on with our lives. Anyways, thank you again for watching and for sticking with my channel all this time. Like I said after the previous milestone, my content doesn't do anything if no one watches it. I am so fortunate to have this wonderful audience. Have an amazing week, everyone. Thank you and goodbye.